Oh, hi. Done. Done. That is the tier list. Op 4, MAVCAM is S. What's it sound like, poo? Give me a sec. Help me out. What can you hear? Does it sound poo? Is there echo? Explain like I'm 5. What's wrong with the sound? Mate, your mic's off. Mate, my mic is on, I'm telling you. Sound is good, thank you. You on Deganja? Hi. Nah, DPCU Op 4 is not S tier just yet. So, voice is quiet, sound is fine. Clean, just not loud enough. Alright, I can do something for that. Give me a sec. No, I can't. Mic is epic. Fucking hell. You cunts can't make up your mind. Too quiet, too loud. Mic is epic. Sound is good. I'm just going to get on with it. But thank you for mic feedback. Where we are. This is where... Yeah, I'm here. This right here is how everyone voted. So this has been getting punched out on Instagram. Wait, where is it? I don't want to see this screen. Bear with me, boys. I'm bloody trash. I'm a boomer. This is what everyone voted for on Instagram. The live poll, I guess you'd call it, which we had 754 people doing in the end. Would have liked to have cracked a grand, but what can you do, I suppose? And this is how the people voted. This was the S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, C tier, C tier, D tier. Personally, I think MMCU down here got absolutely pumped. That is dirty. I don't think this is necessarily in order of how the tier list works. Like, I don't think GPU, Platter Cam, MMCU is the D tier sequence. Particularly. Will it tell us there? If I can scroll a little bit. Yeah, it's not. Because GPU had more D tier votes than MMCU, which had 150 D tier votes, whereas GPU only had 352. Where's the... flippin', I gotta stop swearing. Or YouTube will get crosser than a bloody bag of plovers. I dead set, can't see chat. Hi. Okay, I'm going back to our tier list and I'm just going to send it. I'm going to send it in order of as they appear, which is... Can you see the bottom left here? I really need another screen. That's how all them Flash streamers have it, don't they? They've got their stream and all that kit on one, and then the chat and all that stuff on the other, because I can't see a thing here, boys. I need to see the comments, and then I need to see the stupid live panel as well. MMCU does not deserve D tier. I concur, my man. I agree. For those wondering what that's about, that was back here in the total results. Anyway, I'm going to send it. I'm going to send my tier list, what I reckon. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to put chat so I can read it and get tier listing. Let's put Raffies back in DPCU. I don't know about DPCU. I think most Raffies have switched back to AMCU from what I can tell, and that's what a lot of Raffies in have been telling me on Instagram, I think. I know for the most part, that I don't know how you'd phrase it, the more combat core kind of, is that the phrasing they use? I don't know, it wasn't RAF. your airfield defence guards or Sec 4 blokes, they've been using or switched back to AMCU for quite some time now. And I think they're only relegated to using GPU, maybe sometimes on base for quasi-ceremonial sort of stuff. But I think for the most part, RAFIs have switched back to AMCU. RAFIs, check me on that if that's lying. Honestly, none of the camouflages deserve D tier. You don't reckon? I don't know. I might have a bit of a bloody different opinion there about that. We'll see how we go. I'm going to send my one. When I look at the YouTube studio feed, like what you guys are seeing, it's showing me lag, so it's tripping me out. So I've just got to go ahead and get on with it. I'm going to go in order, starting with DPCU, DPDU, DPCU Op Four, DPMU, DPNU, AMCU, AMP, Crye Multicam, MMCU, GPU, and then Platter Cam. In hindsight, on reflection, after having made this and then thinking about it, I don't think I should have included Crye Multicam. In my head, when I made this list, it was Australian camouflage uniforms that have been used in a substantial capacity, either in trial or operations, much like Crye Multicam was for a while. But then in hindsight, that means that I also left out a bunch of other camis. Because if I'm going to go the route of camouflage patterns that have been used, either in operations or used by the ADF at some point in history, then I'd have to include, or should include by that metric, Tiger Stripe. And there's a multicam type of Tiger Stripe. The name eludes me right now, but that was issued and that was used by guys in CTC, the like official Op Four guys. There was also another Op Four uniform which was based on 3-color desert, like the modern or more modern US military desert pattern. And that was again an issued pattern that was, I think, Australian-made version of the American pattern. So I kind of have to pick my lane here when I'm selecting these camouflage patterns. Am I going to do every camouflage pattern that the Australian military has used in its existence ever, regardless of if it was, to that note, I just have to say issued. Any camouflage pattern that was issued in some capacity to the Australian military, or am I going to go with Australian camouflage patterns that were developed domestically by Australian, industry for the Australian military? And that's kind of what I've ended up with on this tier list that you guys are looking at now. But the only outlier then is Crye Multicam, because Crye Precision Multicam logically was not made by the Australian military or any Australian affiliated military industry. It is, of course, the American OG of multicam patterns. So that's why, getting back to this, I'll ramble and waffle a lot. But this one here, Crye Multicam, I think if I redid this list in its current format, I'd probably sack Crye Multicam from the list and stick to all the others. Because then having done that, all these other patterns are, by that latter example, Australian developed and Australian issued patterns. So if you get rid of Crye Precision Multicam, then you're not stuck with. Then we've got DPCU, DPDU, DPCU Op Four, DPMU, DPNU, AMCU, AMP, MMCU, GPU, Platter Cam. All Australian made, Australian designed, and issued. Yeah, all issued at some point. But that is what it is. Multicam is here to play, so I'm going to rank that accordingly, as if it fits on this list. But yeah, I think a fellow was just asking about a video. Yeah, I will make a video of this as well. I'll put some GIFs and get stuff lined up all over the screen for that. But in that video, I think I'll do either one of those two groupings that I was just talking about. I'll either have it all camouflage patterns that the Australian Army has ever used, Australian military, or it will be Australian developed issued patterns. Like I've got to go one or the other and then get rid of multicam or include all the others. Honestly, it'll probably come down to how long I feel like making the video and how much editing time I'm going to have up my sleeve in the coming weeks. It's the multicam dilemma, bro. Tell me one modern military that doesn't use some sort of multicam variant. Yeah. Multicam taking over the world. I had a post on it a while back. I crunched the numbers on most of the countries that use multicam, either a derivative or the original pattern. I don't know why, man. The Spaniards, the Spanish, they got pressed. They were not pleased about me labeling their pattern a multicam derivative, despite there being some pretty damning proof that it is a copy in terms of the macro or micro shapes rather and patterns within. Anyway, I don't want to piss off the Spanish again. I don't want to go to war with Spain. I've done that once. It wasn't fun. But yeah, peace to the Spaniards in the chat if there's any. There's none. You could do all our cams and a quick fine round at the end with all the multis and other cams. Yeah, that's not too shabby an idea either. Man, I was thinking about something. What did you say before? Was it about the multicam taking over the world? Like some of the Euro patterns though at the moment are kind of a bit more, I suppose, unique and getting away from multicam. I think the Latvian pattern and some of the Baltics there, the Estonian and Latvian camo are quite, I wouldn't say they qualify as a multicam derivative, but they're kind of getting up there looking a bit flash and a bit different. I'm going to send it. I'm waffling too much. So starting with DPCU. DPCU, the arguably OG of Australian military camouflage patterns. If you're talking about like domestically developed, I'm going to put DPCU. There's a few things I'm thinking here when I'm ranking these. It's effectiveness, as in how well it actually works to conceal us or you or me, as in if I'm wearing this stuff and I'm hiding in the bush, how much is it going to work? Secondly, I'm going to go with, what do we call it? Drip. That's what the internet says these days. Mate, the bloody drip of the camouflage. Just how sick it looks. I'm going to speak plainly. How cool does it look? And that's obviously a personal preference, so that's going to help my absolutely subjective judging style here. So how sick does it look? How effective is it? And then there's got to be a kind of third slice of the pie here in consideration for how I'm ranking these, which is, I'm not sure if legacy is the word, but maybe it's heritage, it's history. There's things like that. This is what's going through my head. It's not a hard and fast rule, but this is what I'm thinking about in terms of where do I put these camouflage patterns. But up first, we've got DPCU, the original disruptive pattern camouflage uniform, developed, I believe, in the late 80s. Fact check me on that, though. And also known as Jelly Bean Suit or Bunny Rabbit Ears. I think one of these is more an American designation or nickname than what we call it. I think Jelly Bean Suit you'd hear more in Australia. But I'm giving it A. It's A tier. I think A tier is a beast score for DPCU in today's age. 20 years ago, in a world without multicam, DPCU is easy S tier. 100% easy S tier. Today, in a world where multicam exists and you can have one pattern that works very effectively in multi environments or multiple domains, I understand not perfectly effective in every environment or terrain, and nor even optimally. There's always going to be a dedicated pattern that has been made for that terrain that's going to outperform a multi-terrain pattern. But in a world without multicam, where there is a pattern like DPCU, it's S tier. However, in today's age, tier list 2024, DPCU is an A tier. My reasons why I'm thinking A tier. DPCU extremely effective for what it was designed to do, which was be the domestic camouflage pattern for the Australian landscape in the Australian terrain. And it performs that role exceptionally well. It's also, I would say, iconic in that nothing else screams Australian soldier of that era, being early 90s or late 80s up until the mid-teens, when DPCU was still in circulation, than DPCU. So it gets an A because it's excellent in terms of its effectiveness at hiding diggers in the bush, specifically the Australian bush. It's also extremely iconic, and the history, the legacy of it, I think is going to carry on for a long time in terms of the Australian military. It's going to be one of those those iconic bits of kit, an iconic pattern moving forward. It kind of already is into that domain. As you can see that there's a few, you'll see it on Instagram and this sort of thing, like the suite of DPCU patterns, not just OzCam, but some of its follow-on ones like DPDU and Op Four. They're super popular now for collectors and surplus guys, and you'll even see like airsofters. They bloody go nuts for crazy than clowns cocks for DPCU, especially the Op Four one. I don't know where Op Four gained its recent popularity, but the point is it's iconic. So due to effectiveness in Australia in particularly, and icon of the Australian military, DPCU is an A. Why it's not S, as I was kind of getting to earlier, it's not a multi-terrain camouflage. DPCU will not work well everywhere, and I don't mean it won't work like excellently everywhere. It won't even perform acceptably across all terrains. In Australia or Southwest Pacific, the kind of region we're in, red hot, really good effective camouflage. In the jungle, gets a bit wet, gets a bit darker, still works great there too. But a multi-terrain pattern, it is not. So that's why my DPCU is going in A tier. And that's where, unless I see a super compelling point in the chat, it's going to stay in A tier, I reckon. Okay, let me read up. I'm behind on this. Are we also factoring in uniform functionality? Hated those old knee pads. A fair question. I'm going to say no. I'm not going to factor that in. I'm strictly going to go off the pattern insofar as the camouflage capability and the visual aspect of it, if that makes sense. I might contradict myself down the road here once I start getting into the other ones, but like I'm not going to hold the patterns against or give them negative points if they have, I don't know, a history of some companies perform better uniform than others. Like I think the Hard Yakka had a shaky reputation for a bit, or they might have had a good reputation. I can't remember. Hard Yakka, don't sue me, but there was a pattern there for a while that had not great stitching, or a uniform rather. And that's one example there that I don't want to kind of start judging these, because I'm going for the more so the visual camouflage than the cut or the function of the uniforms. Okay, what's next? DPDU. Yeah, I don't know. DPDU, my instinct says B tier. It says B. I feel good about DPDU in B tier. Let's talk about it from those considerations I was getting at, which is why or how we're ranking these. So first of all, effectiveness. Was DPDU a effective desert pattern? You could argue yes. Keeping in mind it took them about 3 versions from memory to get it right in the end. I think the one that's depicted here and the one that got settled on for most of the Iraq campaign and then the early parts of Afghanistan when DPDU was still being issued then, I believe that was V3 of DPDU. V1, I think, was created and issued in very limited quantities in the very late 90s. I think some SAS guys wore it to Kuwait or somewhere like this. And then I think like early Afghanistan, 2001, Operation Anaconda, this kind of era of Afghanistan. Again, SAS guys wearing V1 DPDU, which was very white. Like if you look at the photos of that, had like a base white undercoat, less so the tan or beige that V3 ended up having. V2 was kind of a mix between them. They, I think, added a different colour to the jelly bean, but they didn't change the base layer. And then V3, we ended up with, I believe, the 5 colour spread, the tan or yellowish base layer, and then the purplish little blotches on there as well. Anyway, V3 alone, was it effective in the desert? The question I'm rambling about. Yes-ish, I suppose. I didn't personally wear it in the desert. We were issued it for Afghanistan, but around the time I went, no one was wearing DPDU. So you got it issued, but it immediately kind of sat in your resh bag because it was a bit poo for Afghanistan. For another reason I'll get to why it's being marked down, which is it is a very not great multi-domain pattern. So when you have DPDU, if you're hiding in the desert or you're working in the desert, that's tip top because you've got a workable or a serviceably effective desert camouflage pattern uniform. But then when the desert suddenly stops being desert and you're now in the bushes or in the urban landscape or in the green zone, then DPDU stands out like bloody neon bullseye. So not too crash hot in terms of its multi-spectrum effectiveness, which might not be a fair thing to judge it on, but I can't pretend that multicam and multi-spectrum patterns don't exist now. Again, if this is one of those things, if this was 15 years ago and there was no patterns that could work somewhat effectively in lots of environments, it'd probably be higher, it'd probably be an A. But I just can't reverse my brain's knowledge that multicam and other patterns exist. So DPDU, sticking with B tier, I think that's pretty generous for DPDU. How did everyone else rank DPDU? Yeah, I'm still here. Relax. Oh, this dumb thing's got to refresh. So the people voted DPDU. I'm trying not to let this contaminate my judgment, but B tier seems pretty much aligned with how most people voted on the public poll here. I hope everyone can see that because I can't see where that's scrolling to. But yeah, I'm happy with B tier. That's fair, I think, for DPDU. What do we got next? DPCU Op Four rather. Bloody developed Kangaroo 95. Probably got a few. So no, it wouldn't be CSMs. You'd have your RSMs now. Who were around remembering that? That's going back a while. But DPCU Op 4 or Missourian Camouflage was, I believe, developed for specifically that exercise. It's like a meme in itself because Kangaroo 95 gets used as a flashback to kind of take the piss out of crusty warrant officers and that kind of thing. So you'll often hear bloody back on K95, me and bloody platoon sergeant Kirky Blakeham, we were digging into stage 3. We did it in 3 hours, not like you diggers eat, that kind of thing. It's used as a crusty throwback when you're taking the mick out of our beloved old school kind of CSMs. But it was made specifically for that. It's an Op 4 pattern, as it's not necessarily made to be effective in hiding you from anyone, but it's meant to provide the military, in this case the Australian Army, a effective way that you can have your enemy role players wearing a consistent uniform that stands out from the Blue 4 uniform, which is a super important but often underperformed part of training or setting up scenario and activity design. People will kind of mug off what the enemy or the Op 4 are wearing, which is not great because for a few reasons you should be taking that seriously. For one, it's not good to condition yourself to be training against shooting people wearing your own kit. And secondly, it's just realism. It's immersion. If you have an enemy that is wearing a similar uniform and they are all consistently wearing the same uniform, it makes to a much more immersive training environment than if you've got your Op 4 wearing everything from a fucking red flannies to Mongolian tiger stripe to blue jeans to inward or inside out AMCU, you name it, which is kind of what you end up with your Op 4 dudes wearing if you don't have a uniform set of kit to give them. So that's why I think stuff like DPCU Op 4, the MAF cam, was such a good idea. And there's still, some, I think, who does this? I think China issues their Blue 4, which is what they call, or we would call our Red 4, like a version of multicam to represent, presumably, Western/American soldiers. And not the PAP multicam, a different one. I'll have to fact check myself on that. Yell at me if that's wrong. But yeah, anyway, having a consistent Op 4 uniform, super duper important. But in terms of that, is it effective insofar as camouflage? Well, no, logically not, because look at it, it's fucking red. Maybe bloody hiding in the red sands on the outback when you're doing K95 back in the day, bloody sweating, you didn't get drink for 3 weeks. Maybe setting Son of the Outback red splotches in your cam, you're going to go pretty well. But outside of that, it's logically not great for any one environment. What's that? Oh, thanks, Adidas. That reminded me. Who was that Who was that dude recently? Was that Da Baby? Who the fuck threw that busted ass Adidas? That made me laugh. You fucking distracted me, cunt. What the fuck was I saying? Yeah, DPCU Op Four. Not going to hide you very well in terms of its concealment, but it's effective at what it was trying to do, which was make a serviceable enemy uniform. So I can't ship it too much for effectiveness in that way because it's not designed to be a effective pattern from a concealment perspective. The other thing, so for that, I'd probably put C. Now, you know what? For effectiveness, if it was just concealment, it's D. It's trash. It's not hiding you anywhere, unless you're lying among some red rocks. But then we've got the other thing to consider, which isn't just how well it conceals you, it's legacy, it's its history, it's its drip. And in that regard, DPCU Op Four or Missourian Camouflage is bloody. You don't drip, you'll drown. It's drippy. It looks good. It looks sick. And again, there's a resurgence of this becoming popular in. There's these airsoft dudes in the States. I've seen them. I can't remember. I've seen them on Instagram. The name eludes me. They're sick for it. They've got like a Mag 58 painted in MAFCAM. I think they sell and make plate carriers in MAFCAM. It's presumably the reproduction kit because the real stuff is long gone. Very, very, very rare collector's item these days. But it looks sick. I think it's going to go B. I think B is a decent spot for MAFCAM. Keep it down. Bloody beeping out the front of my house. DPC Op 4, I think B is fitting and apt. Effective insofar as camouflage? No. Effective insofar as the role it was designed to do, which was make a consistent enemy pattern, extremely effective. So on that metric, it'd go up. Drip and how sick it looks, does it look cool? Extremely. So for that, B tier, I think is a good and proper score for Missourian Cami. DPCU Op 4. Iconic in its own right, making a comeback, very popular. If you happen to find some of the genuine stuff, like an actual set of the real Cami from way back when, keep it and hoard it because it's probably worth more than Bitcoin. But yeah, genuinely, or the real stuff from way back, very hard to find just because it is so old and there wasn't that much in circulation. I remember seeing it probably up until about, the last time I remember seeing it in big batches was the late thousands. Up until then, it'd rock around in battalions in small quantities. You'd have some for Op 4, that kind of kit. But I don't remember seeing any past about like 2009. That was about the last time I saw some in person. I know if you go to the 2RR Museum in Townsville, shout out to Jason Harrison who runs that, and the 2RR Historical Collection, or he runs the Historical Collection rather, they have a set up there. Don't fucking steal it. That's always crossed my mind that someone's going to steal shit from that museum once they work out how valuable it is. So Jace, get your security procedures checked and your cameras updated, mate. I'm encouraging people to steal from you. Well, not encouraging them to steal from you, but letting them know you have valuable shit. He's got a setup there, which is cool if you want to look at a bit of camouflage history, if you like nerding out over camouflage like I do. If not, you probably don't care. But yeah, B tier. Okay, DPMU. DPMU is poo. DPMU sucks. The story behind DPMU and how it came about is a bit of a scandal in and of itself. I've got a whole video, like the script is done, I've recorded it for this, explaining the history of DPMU. It's just draining my life away. It's not compelling, to be honest, and it's one of those ones I sit down to start editing it and then I cry and don't want to edit it. But anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about the history of DPMU because I will eventually get around to doing a video of it. So we'll just discuss how it looks, which is not very good. What it was briefly, again without getting into the nitty-gritty of the history, was an attempt to combine DPCU, which is overwhelmingly a green palette camouflage, as you can see, with DPDU. So they wanted to take the best parts of DPCU, the best parts of DPDU, mix them into one, so then the army wouldn't need two sets of uniforms. it was a fair enough premise. Army likes saving money. There's nothing wrong with that. And at the time, multicam was a thing. And this was, I kind of feel like, an early attempt from the Australian Army. Excuse me. I'm burping. That's rude. Apologies. An early attempt from the Australian Army to make their own multicam or multi-domain pattern. A lot of feel like it's exactly what it was. It was, however, specifically made for only Afghanistan. It was meant to be like an operational pattern for the diggers going to Afghanistan, because the complaints that came about from DPDU, as in you couldn't wear DPDU in the green zone and it wasn't working everywhere. So that was how Midpoint came about. But just look at this. Look at this pattern. It looks like vomit. It's it's like they just overlaid it in Photoshop, DPCU and DPDU, and ended up with DPMU, and it sucks. It was not introduced, and thankfully, it never made it to Afghanistan. I lie, it made it to Afghanistan, but only in a trial capacity. It didn't go on to be the issued pattern. Not very effective from a concealment perspective, exceptionally not drippy. If you want the drippiest of the DPC or the jelly beans, our original DPCU patterns, you go Op Four. That's what you do if you want exclusively aesthetics. The hunt for camouflage, peak aesthetics. You go DPCU MAFCAM. DPMU are not very good. Not effective, doesn't hide you, and doesn't even look cool. So it's D. If there was E, it'd go in E. But there's no E, so it's in D. DPNU. This was the Navy's take on DPCU. It's blue and grey, and it's going in C tier because it, does it conceal you? Well, it was going to the Navy. It's more a point of, it's a corporate image uniform, and so the Navy can be spotted from the Army, which is fair enough. Like if you're going to do that, so you can differentiate your organization's people visually, all cool. DPNU wasn't too bad an attempt at doing that. It was memed because, always viewed memey because the shirt in particular had the reflective high-vis silver strips on the arms, which is, why are you making camouflage and then you put high-vis on it? It's one of those things. Obviously the Navy's not trying to hide in a ship or in grey blue bushes with this pattern. It's just simply so they can stand out as their own people and their own organisation, which is fair enough. I did hear something when I was, I think, discussing Navy. Someone might have DM'd me. Navy patterns, Navy camouflage patterns from around the world, and some country, I want to say it was one of the Asias, Singapore? Was it this? Yeah, we'll go Singapore. It was either Singapore or South Korea. They had a Navy pattern that was developed specifically for the Navy, as in not the Marines, the actual, maritime Navy. But their logic was that it would need to conceal soldiers fighting in and around shipyards. So when your shipyards or when your ports and your Navy bases get invaded, and then the Navy's involved in ground combat, but on the shipyards, that's when your camouflage comes into effect. I was like, that's interesting. Like in the overwhelming greys and urban areas of a shipyard, a pattern like that is going to be logically more effective than in the bush. So that was kind of another interesting take, and it got me thinking about that. If you're going to make a Navy pattern, at least make it A, look sick, and B, make it also effective in the urban terrain. So then you can hide your people if and when your Navy base gets attacked and you've got, you're being raided by whoever your adversary's special operations forces are. Presumably these are the people raiding Navy bases, and then you're somewhat concealed there. So DPNU, not very effective by Army standards. Obviously it's not hiding you in a bush. If I use that Singaporean example, is it going to hide you in the crumbling ruins of a bombed out Navy port and shipyard? Yeah, it'd probably do okay in that capacity, especially if you ripped off or cut off the high visibility strips on the upper arms, on the shirt. Is it drippy? Ish. Not as drippy as Op Four cami. Not as ugly as DPMU. So I think C tier for DPNU is about right and fair for me. The other thing to consider there is and I know I said this before, and this is probably where I'm going to start contradicting myself, but it is a heavier uniform, and I'm not holding that against it. It's just an observation, because I think from memory that Navy has a higher requirement for fireproof, whatever the hell, kit material in their uniforms. I think that's the scariest word to a mariner, is if they hear the F word on a ship. Oh no, it's both. It is the F word on a ship, but I think to them that's fog. I think the R word for the army, as in if you say rain in the field, you're a jerk, because it will rain if you use that word. And then F word to the Navy, I think is fog. I'm not sure if it's fire or fog, but if you say either one of those words on a ship, then people will like not be happy with you. You know, it's one of those digger superstition things. Anyway, DPNU CT. What's next? AMCU. Let me check chat. Sorry, what's everyone saying? They got fire retardant. You won't burn as fast. Con. Yeah, pro, you won't burn as fast. Con, you'll drown faster. Yeah, chill out, dude. You will. Like the tankies and Avos. Yeah, there's, I believe now, AMCU cut. Or not now, it's probably been around for a few years, but there's AMCU that's fireproof as well, and you will see, as you've pointed out, tankies and Avos as well in that. It's more faded. Well, it looks more faded anyway. It could just be the material, but that's how you can spot that bloody, what am I saying? Fireproof AMCU, because it looks almost a bit more greyed out, like it's been washed out. What's this? SS, yeah, la LMMAO, SSST now S. Fucking hell. ST for AMCU. Oh, boys, you're killing me. AMCU, everyone is shrieking S. All right, let's talk about it. I'm going to put it here, but it's getting discussed. AMCU came around in, I want to say, 2014. It was the successor to both Legacy DPCU and AMP, which is up next. AMCU had a bit of a rocky start. AMCU was like, who's that game developer that has all... They're known for every time they release a new game, it's just cooked. It never works. Is it Fallout? Might even be, Battlefield. What the hell are we talking about? Battlefield. Whenever they release that, it's cooked. Anyway, when AMCU came out, it was a bit of a mess. So the first versions in 2014, and I know this because I had a set, the stitching on the Velcro was poo, not very good. So all the Velcro around the Bethesda, I think so, yeah, thanks. All the stitching and Velcro around the sleeves. Where else was there Velcro? On the pants as well, like around the blousing on the boot, and on the combat camis around the part where there's a little strap where you tighten like the knee pads, I think. Oh, the pockets as well. Of course, the pockets, anywhere there was Velcro was cooked. It would fall off in the wash and you'd have all this Velcro just like dangling off the uniform. It looked heaps sacky. And that took a bit of, that was not well received. So AMCU, when it first came out, was not super popular. And I'd add to that, at the time AMCU came out, AMP right here was very much a thing. Now AMP was Australian Multicam pattern. So AMP was what the British did effectively with their MTP, in that they took the colorways of Multicam and added their unique patterns to it. We did the exact same thing later on with AMP. I'm going to bloody stick him back down here because I'm not getting ahead of myself, but I have to use this as an example. But what I'm getting at is, it's easy to say now, AMCU ST, but you got to remember the history behind it. You got to remember what went wrong when it came out. And it wasn't just that. The other thing with the Gen 1 AMCU, which I personally liked, but this was heaps unpopular. You'll see some photos as well of the Gen 1 shirt, the Gen 1 combat shirt was very, very, it was like the Multicam, the Crye Precision G3 combat shirts, I think, which had that very white base layer. It's not white, it's tan or beige. But the AMCU ones were like, they were on the white side of beige. It was hella bright and people thought it was insane. I thought it looked sick. And I kind of had my opinion changed on it because initially I was like, this is way too bright, this looks dumb. But then once I saw it in the bush just without armor and that sort of kit on it, it was still pretty effective. It worked just fine. And they ended up changing that in the later versions of AMCU to a more brown, very dark khaki kind of base coat for the combat shirt there. And that's the one you'll see to this day. There hasn't really been any other evolution from AMCU or within AMCU from that V1 or Gen 1, whatever you want to call it, cut that came out in 2014. That was quickly rotomed, and then they updated it to give it a more brown and not coyote, I'll say khaki kind of underlayer there. Anyway, what I'm getting at was that when AMCU first came out, it was not that popular. I've got a dirty little confession to make too, because I like AMCU now. I love it. I do. I think it's sick. I wrote a scathing letter to the Army newspaper at the time. And it wasn't particularly just because AMCU sucked. It was because why the fuck are we going to go from AMP or multicam, which we'd had at the time. Multicam was not being used anymore in Afghan or on operations except by special operations guys. Why are we going to go from a multi-terrain pattern, which we've developed and paid good money for, a lot of money to, Crye Precision they did, I believe, to get the rights for Crye Precision, and then I think with Crye's assistance developed AMP. Why are we going to just do away with that and then make AMCU, which, as sick as it looks, is a one single domain color. By this time, I don't think anyone was doing anything hectic in Iraq anymore. And why I say Iraq is that I mean a theater that was exclusively desert, or like Middle East, North Africa, this kind of region, where you need a more dedicated, like desert kind of pattern like here, or that at the time arguably did. AMCU seemed like a backward step in that way because we used to have DPDU and DPCU. And then we decided, well, we don't want DPCU and DPDU when we're deploying because then we've got to pay for two uniforms. We've got to pay for DPCU camis in the green, and then we've got to have DPCU in the desert. Oh, and PS, now we need a body armor system and a pack system and your hat, everything else, you name it, in two different camouflage patterns. We're going to get rid of that, and we're going to go to Crye Precision Multicam, which is what happened for a time there in Afghanistan, and then eventually in Afghanistan, Crye Precision was replaced with AMP, because these two patterns, love them or hate them, and I know Crye gets a lot of hate these days, they work reasonably well everywhere. And every time I make that statement, there's a comment or something like, yeah, but it doesn't work the best in this terrain. Yeah, I know, it doesn't work the best in any one terrain, but it works reasonably well in almost any terrain, and that's what makes them so good. And for that reason, when AMCU came out, again, me as well, I was like, this is a fucking backward step. Because we've gone from having two patterns, we decided that was dumb because it's expensive for one, and now you need two sets of kit for everything. We've replaced that with Crye Multicam and AMP. Sick, good move, Army. That's clever. Oh wait, we're getting rid of AMP and now we want AMCU, which is a pattern that works fantastically in the Australian bush, and probably all of the Southwest Pacific region, arguably, and probably globally. There's a bunch of places where you'd have a matching color palette where the scrub and vegetation and terrain would work, or where AMCU would work well for. But we're just going to do that. And then, so God forbid what happens if we have to go back to fighting in the desert. Are we going to make AMDU? Do we need now another desert pattern uniform with all the associated costs of developing and then making and then issuing all the kit there as well? Silly. So AMCU could be S tier, based on, I suppose, I don't know, combination of effectiveness in the Australian vegetation, Australian terrain, and droopiness. I do think it looks sick. AMCU does look cool. I do like that it's a somewhat unique take on multicam. So that gets cool brownie points in and of itself. That it is more unique than, say, what UK did with MTP, which was make it pretty much as multicam with different patterns, or like what AMP did. Or who else has done a similar version of multicam derivative that doesn't really look different. New Zealand as another example. But I don't know, man. I just can't put it in S tier. I don't want to. Because it's not a multi-terrain pattern, which is what I was getting at before. I can't pretend that multicam and AMP doesn't exist. They exist and they're real and they're here in the world right now. So I'm going to put AMCU at AMCU goes A tier and AMP goes S tier. I said it. It's done. It's done. It's done. Before I get slaughtered, hear me out. AMP, in my opinion, is what we should have used. If you have AMP, you can have the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, all using the same pattern. You save money as an organisation because you don't need GPU. Look at that. You don't need GPU. You don't need MMCU. You have AMP. You have one pattern that looks sick and works everywhere. It works in the green zone. It works in the desert. It works in the bush. It works in Australia. It works in the South Pacific. It works everywhere we need to be. We paid for it too. How about that? We paid mega big bucks to have this thing developed for us. Used it for like 2 years and then just trashed it. Never used it again. AMP is S tier on the grounds of both usability, functionality, how effective it is in any terrain. It also ticks the box of corporate imaging, as in it's uniquely enough an Australian pattern because it's hard to see on this shit photo. There's still enough little jelly beans in there that we can loosely identify us as Australian soldiers, especially compared to other non-multicam users. If you line up a British digger and a Kiwi digger and a Aussie in AMP and MTP respectively, are you going to be able to tell them apart? Maybe, depends on the distance. At 100 meters, probably not. But the point stands that in the times where you're going to need corporate imaging, as in you want your people to look like Australian soldiers and not British or not Kiwi soldiers, it's going to work in those settings. I also think it looks sick. I said it. I think AMP looks sick. I think it's a interesting take on what was the original Crye Multicam pattern by incorporating the jelly beans from DPCU and keeping the original colorway for the most part of Crye Precision Multicam. And for that reason, AMP for me is S tier. AMP is my S tier pick for these cami patterns. Can we have multiple S tier picks? Maybe. I don't know. But I don't know. I don't see how that. I feel like I'm being perfectly reasonable. What's this fella saying? I rocked up late, but it's an absolute crime that DPCU Op Four isn't S tier. It works everywhere because the moment someone spots you, they shit themselves in fear and then they run away. Yeah, true. The Missourians are a force to be reckoned with. So the second they spot you in Missourian camo, they're going to go running. To the uninitiated, Missouri, because I don't think I mentioned it before, Missouria or Missourians was the fictional nation state that Australia used to go to war with back in the day. So from the, I want to say, early 90s up until pretty recently, with the introduction of, there's a whole new system for it now. It was just being introduced as I was leaving the military. I can't remember the name. It's an acronym, DATE, Direct Action Training Environment. I could be wrong. It's not direct action. Something adaptive. Someone help me out. What's DATE stand for? I can't remember. Something training environment. Anyway, as part of DATE, they made a whole new set of fictional adversaries that are aligned now across, I believe, NATO, at the very least between USA, UK, and Australia. But prior to that, we had the dreaded Missourians. The Missourians were a weird mix of, I don't know how you describe it. It was like if you took Indonesia and the Soviet Union and put them in a blender, or you told AI to say, hey, make me a fictional adversarial nation state that hates me and wants to invade me, using Indonesia and the Soviet Union as a template. That's what Missouria was. They used all Soviet kit, but they were an island in this fictional multiverse. They were an island off, I believe, like the northeast coast of Australia, and they did not like us very much. And they could always be found, no matter how many Missourians there were, or no matter what, the size of the exercise was, the Missourians could always be found in 2 to 3 man groups, 50 meters in front of your section at the base of tree. That's the safest target indication you can ever give, if anyone was wondering. Navy cams have a unique problem. They work brilliantly in the water. Missouri and Krasnovia, number 1. Chill out, dude. Direct, decisive action training environment. Thank you. Yes, that was it, not direct action. Decisive action training environment date. Did I leave this in the right spot? Where was Op Four? I'm still here. Yeah, I was rambling about Missourians. AMP's ST. It looks sick. It works. It works for all 3 services. We still look Australian. We have one uniform that works in any environment we're going to be in. And PS, you have the market support of every gear manufacturer ever, because anything that exists from any kit manufacturer on the planet made in multicam blends in seamlessly with AMP. So unlike, say, trying to mix, multicam pouches with AMCU, which stands out a little bit more and creates a bit more contrast, with AMP you can pretty well blend in anything Crye Precision without a problem. So AMP's S tier. Yeah, no apologies. MMCU, if I go back over here, this was how the people voted. This got cooked on the people's rankings, and I'm not sure why. I think this was a very harsh rating of MMCU. I don't think it deserved D tier, much less the bottom tranche of D tier here. And I'm not sure why it got the hate it got, because if you look at MMCU, I might actually stay over here. If you look at MMCU, it's like if you took multicam black and made it effective, you get MMCU. It looks sick, and it looks like it would be plausibly effective as an urban camouflage, for example. So I'm not sure why MMCU got the hate it did. I don't think it's D tier. I think it's got a lot of good stuff going on with it. I'll jump back on here though and talk about it. So MMCU, by criteria, is it effective? Insofar as, will it conceal us in the environment it's meant to conceal us in? Again, being a Navy pattern, I'm not putting it C. It's just sitting there for now. Being a Navy pattern, it's not so much meant to conceal you with anything per se as it is to just provide a type of corporate image. It's a McDonald's uniform. You can look at that person and say, that person is in the Royal Australian Navy. Cool, got it. But with that being said, it's one of the sicker naval or maritime camouflage uniforms for a Navy branch, I would say globally. It looks like it would be viably effective in urban terrain. And if you go back to that example of, I think we talked about it with DPNU, the Singaporean example, which is they have, and again, don't quote me on this, this was a hot take from DMs, which I thought was interesting, haven't fact checked it. They have their naval camouflage suited for concealment in and among a Navy shipyard or a Navy base. And in that context, I think MMCU would be sick. Again, the problem you have is that there's, I believe, high visibility reflective strips on the arms. That's because Navy people falling overboard is a thing to worry about when you're in the Navy. So you don't want to be bloody dropped overboard and then you get, I don't know, left halfway to Indonesia or whatever. So that, yeah, silly. Obviously, your reflective strips aren't concealing you, but the pattern in and of itself looks sick. Is it effective at what it's meant to do? Provide the Australian Navy a representational uniform that is brand unique? Yes, it is effective at that. Does it look sick? I think it does. I think it looks Chadley. It's like multicam black that would actually work in urban terrain. And I'm not explicitly poo-pooing multicam black for that reason, because it gets a lot of hate for being a dumb camouflage. But I think even if you look on Crye's website itself, multicam black isn't meant to conceal you like in the dark or in urban terrain. It's simply, much like these Navy patterns, multicam black is a form of corporate identity. So it's more like a law enforcement pattern. So you'll see a lot of police tactical type units and groups using multicam black, not because it's like a sick pattern for hiding in the dark or for hiding policemans, but because it's a somewhat uniform-esque pattern, and it comes in a uniform or a cut of clothing with good utility. And yeah, for that reason, Multicam Black gets pooed on, I think, wrongly, when it gets poo-pooed for being not an effective pattern. But conversely, MMCU, I think, would be somewhat effective if you were to try and take it and make it, say, an urban terrain pattern. The colorway and the tones, it looks like that old school, again, the color, not the shape, that Future Warrior or the Urban Warrior US Marine Corps camo from, again, the mid-90s, I think it was. There's those photos of those blokes knocking around with skateboards at the that massive Mount Village, wherever that was. And it's the same thing. They've got like those T shapes, and it's like the grey, whitish uniform. And it looks similar colorway to almost that, like old school urban cam. Or there's that other old school urban cam that used to say at Kmart and all that sort of thing. Show bag cami. But it looks sick. And for that, I'm putting it at DT. I think MMCU slaps. I'd love to get a set, but do not have. I don't know what to do with it. But yeah, I'm a collector. Okay, Crye Multicam. Again, for the dudes who went here at the start, I'll concede that I regret putting Crye Multicam on this list because it doesn't really fit the theme of the rest of the patterns. A quick rehash, I put Crye Multicam on here because my thinking was when I made this list that it's going to have all the patterns with T-block, thank you, that's the one, that's the Marine pattern. I made this list thinking Australian Army camouflage patterns that were either broadly issued and used. That was kind of my first thought. On reflection, I should have just got rid of Multicam from this list, and then the others would have fit in here better. Because then they are truly all Australian designed and made and issued. Being made neither here nor there, but they're Australian in and of themselves. Multicam or Crye Precision is logically not. But it is here, so I'm going to play it accordingly. And it's going A. It's going A. It's the GOAT of multi-terrain patterns. It was the first one to do it successfully. And it's cool to hate it now. I get it. It's everywhere. Everyone uses it. And that sucks. Like, I don't know. The more something gets popular, the easier it is to hate. But it just works, man. It just does what it's meant to do, which is it will hide you somewhat effectively in just about any terrain you will find yourself in. And that's the beauty of it. That's what it just does exactly what it sets out to do. From its very inception, whenever Crye Precision first made it, and when Scorpion then became Multicam, and then weirdly the US Army then adopted Scorpion again. But it just works. It just does what it's meant to do, and it will work no matter where you're going to be. It's one of those things, gun to your head, zombie apocalypse tomorrow. You're not an army man. You're zombie apocalypse. I've got to survive, and I've got to stay concealed, and I need to pick one pattern, one uniform that's going to work anywhere I'll be. It's going to be Crye Precision Multicam, or it's going to be a variant of Multicam, or a multi-terrain pattern. It just is. So it's easy to hate, but you've got to kind of acknowledge the history and legacy of Multicam. If you don't have Multicam, you don't have AMCU, you don't have AMP, you don't have MMCU, you don't have GPU. Multicam's the GOAT, the original gangster of multi-terrain patterns, and it just works. And for that, Multicam for me is A tier. Did I skip DPMU? No, DPMU belongs in D. That's correct. Next up, GPU, which is the Royal Australian Air Force pattern. Look at it. Where did this score? Let's check the other one. Mate, can you stop? I'm still here. Would you chill out? Okay, GPU scored. What is this? Go away. GPU D tier with 352 votes for D tier. I agree. GPU, ghastly, doesn't work. Again, I've got to be consistent here in my rankings. If I'm going to apply what it set out to do to this, the same way I did the Navy, which was, this is to give the Air Force a sense of corporate identity and give the Air Force their own uniform, which lets people look at them and say, oh, those people are Royal Australian Air Force people. and they are not Australian Army people. That's all it's meant to do. By that metric, it's pretty fucking good because nothing else looks like GPU. But in this case, context of camouflage, I'm going to say I don't think that's a good thing, and it sucks. So going off the two parts to that metric, one, is it effective as a camouflage pattern? No, 0. It gets minus a squillion points on that. Is it effective as its corporate brand? Yes, of course. Does it look cool? No, it sucks. It's terrible. It's blue. It looks like Street Fighter camo. We're talking Jean-Claude Van Damme and bloody Kylie Minogue, might I say. I think it was Kylie Minogue. It was Kylie Minogue. Jean-Claude Van Damme, Kylie Minogue. Original Street Fighter movie. It looks like that. It's show bag camo. It's terrible. It just sucks. And just the money was spent on this just makes me a bit sad as well. GPU is D tier and well deserving of D tier. I just don't have, that's all I have to say about that. That's all I've got to say about that, man. What are people saying? It's even got RAF logo stamped into them. That's upsetting. I'd take DPCU over AMCU if I couldn't have Crye Cam again. Look how they massacred my boy. If I was gay, I'd love... Chill out, man. Far out. I'm queer and I think GPU is too far out, man. I'm going to get zocked. Police TRT use MC Black. Some used Army Cams. Platter Cam, awesome pattern, shit uniform. Never had one. Very rare. Platter Cam, my beloved. Here we go. On that note, Platter Cam is up. Platter Cam, look, I'm going to go... I'm not going to look yet. I was going to check whoever else rated it. It's... Think about the time Platter Cam became a thing, which I want to say was 2008. Someone Google it hella quick. I think Platter Cam came to exist around 2008. At the time, digital patterns were sort of one of two things, becoming in vogue courtesy of MARPAT and CADPAT, or becoming extremely despised courtesy of UCP and the US Army. But as the trends go, Platter Tac, as in the Australian kit manufacturer, icons of the game, they've been around a long time, they developed a pattern which was the DPCU palette, color palette that is, mixed with a digital or pixelated camouflage pattern, or shapes rather. It's, for its time, reasonably, not groundbreaking, because obviously it's not innovative, it's digital patterns that existed, but it was a good crack out. I've got to tip my hat to what Platter Tac were trying to do, and that it got it got used in an official trial capacity. I believe it was Perth. It went to, I don't know who. I can't remember. Someone DM me this again. There's photos of both SAS and two commando blokes using Platter Cam in Afghanistan, which I believe is the only place it was used. It wasn't used domestically as far as I can tell. But it is reasonably iconic. We took Australian colours, iconic Australian colours from DPCU, and we put them in what was sort of popular at the time in digital or pixelated camo. And was it effective? I'm speculating here because I never used Platter Cam. Very few did. And all you've got to go off for Platter Cam in terms of its effectiveness is what you can see in photos. I'm going to say that it probably could have been more effective, but it wasn't that effective. And why I say that is because it's one of these histories written by the victor things. As in, if digital and pixel were the way to go in terms of camouflage patterns for uniforms, then everyone by now would have evolved to exclusively digital and pixel patterns. But that's not been the case. That's not the way the militaries of the world has gone. Pixel/digital hasn't become the overwhelming trend in camouflage uniforms for militaries around the globe. And for that, I'm going to go or err to that pixel, for whatever reasons, probably weren't that effective or weren't as effective as what has come to pass with multicam trend patterns. I know we've got USMC and Canadians, and there's some people still using pixels, and they use them very well. And what the Marines have going on with the two colors of MARPAT, I think, work excellently. I've seen those both in person in their respective environments, and they work pretty well. But Platter Cam for effectiveness, probably not comparing it even as well to, I don't know. I'm just going to say it would, I imagine, be on par with DPCU. There was a reason DPCU worked as well in Australia as it did. You could maybe make a case that Platter Cam would have worked, or digitalised cam would have worked better outside Australia than DPCU. But I'm going to put it as, I'm going to put it B tier. I'm going to put it B tier for having the guts to try, for having having a red hot crack. You know what I mean? Doing something a little different. Australian industry forking out a bit of cash. I don't know if they were sponsored by the Army to generate the pattern, or if they came up with it themselves and then went, hey, Army, this is Platter Tac. We have a cool pattern. Do you want to try it? And the Army went, yes. I haven't seen the underside of those shiny rocks. I don't know the full story behind Platter Cam. But either way, I think it's a historically interesting part of the Australian military camouflage world. The only digital version that we had of any one of the legacy patterns that not only came to exist, but was used operationally, albeit for a short amount of time in Afghanistan by special operations guys. So I think it's an interesting bit of history, and I do think it looks reasonably cool. Probably loses most points just for effectiveness. Yeah, Platter Cam, B tier. Looking at this, I'm gonna sit down and just I'm gonna just reflect on this really quick. I'm gonna just check over this list and make sure that it feels good to me. And what are people saying? I vaguely remember seeing some 2 commando blokes wearing Platter Cam on X domestically in a mate's photos. Okay, cool. I stand corrected. They could have been used domestically for all I know. It would make sense they were worn as part of like an MRE. They ended up in Afghanistan, so I'd presume that they likely trained in the same kit they deployed in. But it certainly wouldn't have been for a very long period of time, because it wasn't long after Platter Cam was issued and prototyped by Special Operations Command guys that they started getting issued multicam. At first in a trial capacity, but then based on their feedback, it became the standard for them for the rest of the Afghan campaign for the Task Force 66 guys. DPMU needs to go to C tier, so GPU can be in its own tier of shame. Yeah, that's a fair point. Look, ideally, GPU would go in E tier if I had an E tier, but look, I'm a bloody boomer. I don't know how to do this internet shit, all right? I set up this tier list. I've only put 5 tiers in. In future, I'll know to put more. I'm going to put E tier in for the next one, and that's where GPU would go. But I don't have E tier, so I can't put GPU there, and I really dislike DPMU, so that's staying in D tier. But I act your point. GPU could deserve a thing of shame by itself. Tom W. A said, give me bloody cashies. That's chicken tendies. Cheers, fella. That's appreciated. Thank you, my friend. Did he say anything? No, he just bloody throwing me cashies, throwing me. What's $8 get you at KFC these days? I'll treat myself. Seen enemy party dudes wearing Platter Tac tiger stripes last couple of years. That's good. I'm glad the tiger stripes have made a resurgence, because I ranted about it at the start, but you've got to have your Op 4 guys dressed in a consistent scheme and a consistent uniform. That is assuming they're meant to be actual military dudes. If your Op 4 is your run-of-the-mill, I don't know, terrorist / freedom fighter / guerrilla / insurgents, and they're not a state military body, of course, they might not have a consistent uniform. But if you're up against Missourians or Camarians or a fictional nation state enemy that wear uniforms, you should all have them in the same thing. And that's why I think Tiger Stripes making a comeback for that is good, because there's plenty of it around. You can have it somewhat cheap, and bloody, it looks sick. It looks sick. And it stands out from AMCU too, which I think is important, because AMCU is definitely much brighter than Tiger Stripe. But on that note, I think I will, for the next tier list, when I make the video, or I'll just remake the whole tier list, I will have all the Op Four patterns included as well. So being Tiger Stripe, being, oh, my brain is fat and old and I can't remember things. The Multicam Tiger Stripe. It has a proper name. I can't remember it right now. I suck. That one, and then the 3-color US Desert as well. 5 schmackos from Taylor Ann. Shukran very much. Thank you. Let me, here we go. Bloody love heart emoji to both them. You guys are kings. Good old Camarians. I never came up against Camarians, just Missourians. I think Camarians were they might have predated Missourians a little bit. The best camo, in my opinion, is AMP or AMCU. Yeah, that's what I concluded myself. AMP over AMCU, I think, makes people screech. As soon as I clicked on AMCU, the people in the chat, which, how many people we got? 50. Thank you all. 50. That's sick. It was just S. Everyone wants AMCU in S tier, but I didn't do it. I'm sticking to my guns. I'm sorry. I'll apologize for AMCU not being in S tier, but I won't apologize. I'm not bloody apologizing for AMP being in S tier. All right. I think I made a very compelling case. AMCU staying there. But yes, sorry. As I was saying, I weave, Joe. I go back and forth, but I come back. I'm weaving all over the joint. The next tier list I make, or if I make a video on this, I will include literally every camouflage pattern that has been used, whether or not it is Australian, by the Australian military. So all Op 4 variants. I'll even throw in ATACs, which I know you can find photos of. It's pretty public knowledge that there's photos of 2 commando guys in Afghanistan wearing ATACs AU around 2010 to 2013 period. So yeah, shout out to them, because I think ATACs is sick as well. We used it in country as well at the same time, but just not in the same way, because I imagine that Task Force 66 or the commando blokes who would have been using it had probably more, not probably, they did 100% have more leeway with what they can wear and did wear. But I know that, shout out to Adam Kelly, my team leader at the time, we had a couple of bits of AMCU, ATACs kit, which we used on OPs in the mountains, because ATACs in the mountains of Afghanistan is insane. It is invisibility cloak. And it's one of the examples where a terrain or domain specific pattern is just out of this world. It's so good at hiding in amongst rocks or mountains. ATACs AU, like the original one. So I'd probably include that, as that's another example of something that was used operationally, was never issued. Maybe the 2 commando guys got it issued. I don't know if they did or bought it themselves, but either way, it was used and has we have publicly available, accessible information of it being used on operations by Australians. So yeah, I'd include ATACs rather in that category, and pretty much anything that we can publicly acknowledge or find in terms of camouflage patterns that are being used or have been used, then I'll put them all on the tier list as well. 10 schmackos from Sean. I'm going to butcher your last name, mate. I'm not going to say it. Sean. Bloody Sean. Have a little love heart. There you go. I crave more content. Any idea when you'll post next? What I was saying earlier was, without rambling too much, I've got a video in the works which is specifically on DPMU. The script is done. I've recorded all the audio for it, but every time I sit down to go and start editing it, I cry. So I think I'm going to just shelve that one for now. And then the next, to answer your question short, any idea when you'll post next? No. I have no fucking idea when I'll post next, but I can tell you that the next video that I'll be working on will be this tier list video. or a variation of this tier list video in the Australian Army camouflage patterns. When it's out, I don't know. I'm not going to go as nutty with all the memes and GIFs and all the stuff that I put in the other videos, just because I don't want it to take that long. It does take me a while to crank out those other videos when the pacing is quick in terms of the shit you guys see flying all over the screen. I'll probably dial it in a bit just so I can edit it a bit faster and then get it out to you faster. What else is people saying? I'm going to Holsworthy for an elective course. Cadets not old enough to join the army yet. In January, really cool that we have commandos there. Yeah, man, that's home of 2 Commando, Holsworthy. One of these D camos be good for. I don't know. Is that a fucking? You trying to wind me up? Is this one of them? I gotta watch myself. I gotta watch myself in this chat, because I'm going to get stitched up with us seeing them. I seen the bloody videos. I seen them. They put in the chat. They put in, hey man, what do you think about, what do you think about the new camouflage pattern, D's nuts, all that shit. I'm bloody onto yous. I've seen them happening in the other videos, and I gotta watch myself. You can't slip up. I'm on high alert here, boys. I'm reading this just like I'm gonna get stung. What else? I've still got my dad's. Here's a comment from Matthew. I've still got my dad's. I think they're designated ERDL camo from Vietnam. Hoo-wee! Man, ERDL. That's iconic. Again, I think, shout out to Jason Harrison, who runs a 2RR historical collection, which is the Unit Museum in Townsville. Highly recommend you go check it out if you're in Townsville, or even if you're dropping through. Don't steal any of the camo, because he has heaps and it is valuable. Jason, update your security cameras. I think he has a set of ERDL in there as well. And ERDL, I think, was used throughout Vietnam by Aussie SASR blokes. It was that and Tiger Stripe. I think you'll see pretty commonly in photos of SAS dudes in Vietnam. But it's super just iconic, ERDL. Super duper cool looking. I believe in Battlefield 4, goated game, you could have ERDL as one of the equipped camos. Bring that back, man. Bring back Battlefield 4. What happens with that other one? I got ERDL and ERDF. Dude, have you seen this is what I was talking about. Chill out, dude. Have you seen the new I'll give it to you. Have you seen the new Dragon cams? Mate, they're red hot. They're my favorite. They're freshly issued to the PLA. The Dragon cams. Oh, you funny gun. All right, what else we got? We need more AMCU versions for more terrain. Well, that's again, you get into the conversation of, do you diversify? Why am I clicking DPCU Op Four? Do you diversify, and do you have AMCU for green? Do you have MMCU for urban, as an example? I know it's the Navy cam. And do you have AMDU for desert? Or do you go one pattern fits all, save yourself a chunk of cash, have one uniform for all 3 services, and still keep a bit of corporate identity and use AMP? I think you use AMP. But on that note, AMCU, I'll shout them out. Instagram page, I don't remember the exact handle name, but Blanchwater Gear, if you I think that's them. I apologize if I got that wrong. It is Blanchwater, I think. Blanchwater have made a AMDU pattern. So they've taken the, I suppose it's AMCU pattern blotches, and have recolored it for AMDU. And it looks pretty sick. I don't know much about them. I think they're a small kit manufacturer and retailer. They make a few bush hats and boonies, that kind of thing. But it is a pretty cool take on AMCU, and it doesn't just look like Multicam Arid V2. It looks like its own desert pattern camouflage, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's AMDU by Blanchwater Gear, if you look that up. Why I didn't include that on that list is because A, it's like a brand new thing from them. B, it's a small, from what I can tell, like Aussie company having a crack. God bless them. I certainly don't think it's been issued by anyone, and I've not even seen a photo of it in use by a digger anywhere. If it ticks that box, if there's a photo somewhere of AMDU by Blanchwater being used, then I'd maybe consider it, putting it in that full tier list of Australian Army camos. But yeah, without, again, publicly accessible visual evidence here, then I just don't think it's really right to include AMDU because it is a private venture or private experiment, I guess you'd call it. But it's very cool. It it looks sick. AMCDs. Who uses AMP? Sadly, no one anymore. So AMP was it wasn't trial because it was issued. Excuse me, I'm coughing. AMP was developed post DPMU, which is this one here, and pre-AMCU. And it was briefly issued and worn in Afghanistan, I want to say from around 2012 up until the issue of AMCU, which would have been in the Afghanistan timeframe around 2015, but I could be wrong. So AMP was only used for a few years. I think it did one of the last rotations of Operation Slipper, maybe the last couple of rotations of Operation Slipper, which would have been, I think, 3 RAR, and I don't remember who else. And then it would have done a rotation or two of, what the hell was the operation in Kabul? I can't remember the name. Operation High Road, I want to say, which was then what Afghanistan became once Operation Slipper wrapped up and they packed up the main base at Tarin Kowt and moved pretty much the bulk of the Australian military presence to Kabul, which I think was Operation High Road without Googling and cheating. And they would have used AMP for a rotation or two, don't quote me, before switching to AMCU, which then became the standard pattern. And weirdly enough, we had people in Iraq at the same time when AMCU came about. And so there's these dudes in Iraq wearing a green pattern uniform. Like, I know it wasn't like they were roaming around the green zones of Iraq looking for a fight. It was a largely training mission. But still, it just seemed a little bit odd that they were wearing this very green, very evidently Australian pattern for a very obviously desert terrain environment. I think on that note, the Norwegians, I believe, had a pretty cool approach because unless my memory deceives me, I think the Aussies over there worked with Swedes and Norwegians, a few of the Nordic countries rather. And I think the Norwegians' approach to how we're going to tackle this desert uniform pattern, because the Norwegians have their own woodland pattern that they obviously wear at home. But now they're going to Iraq. That green one's probably not fit for purpose. They, I think, just bought and issued Crye G3 uniforms just in the tan pattern. Or not the tan pattern, just the tan colour. So this was, I would suppose, pre-Crye Precision Multicam Arid. But the Norwegians, I guess, were just like, hey, we're going to a desert country. We have an overwhelmingly woodland uniform. What are our options? Oh, we could R&D and develop and waste all this money or spend all this money making a desert uniform, or we could simply buy our troops a tan uniform in a combat cut by this company called Crye Precision, who seem to be doing that and have been doing it for a while. And I think that was a pretty handy solution. It was kind of like a good credit card approach to a problem, which in hindsight I think was a smart move because that Iraq mission then obviously didn't hang around for that long. Whenever it was that wrapped up, I want to say pre-COVID sometime. So yeah, they probably got their money's worth out of that. Are those uniforms expensive off the shelf? Yes. Is buying your force of military trainers and mentors just tan Crye Precision cheaper than R&Ding your whole own desert pattern uniform? Yeah, 1,000 squillion million% cheaper. Ain't no way he'd have this much forbidden knowledge with never having served. Yeah, man, I was Army man one time. Bloke said Norgie. He did Afghanistan. It's always back to Crye. Crye is everywhere. I have seen a black AMCU like us. Want to be stealth AMCU. Black AMCU. You're not talking about MMCU? Or are you talking about Multicam Black by Crye Precision? Because that seems like what... Fernando, keep it bloody down out there. My cat's going nuts. No, kitty, you can't come in. What else have we got? I'm going to wrap it up here rather pretty soon. I'll just read up the last of these comments. When's the ceremonial uniform tier list dropping? Who's got the goated ceremonial uniforms? Those North Korean generals with like the gongs and the medals like halfway down their chest. I don't think anyone's beating them, mate. That's that's a tough one. Actually, on a serious note, on a non-piss take answer, the US Army, didn't they go back to their like World War II era? Well, it was the dress uniform, I suppose, from World War II. I think they like brought back a version of that as their current dress uniform. I think that's pretty gangster. My mate landed at, who's this? Predatron AU. My mate landed at K2 to get heloed into Trashkanistan in 01. Stepped off the jet wearing DPCU from being in Africa. Was immediately handed a set of M81 and a Choco DNC Parker. Ooh, that's a nice bit of kit. That's another one that's becoming another pattern that is. It's very, very in vogue online at the moment. Is the that digital disruptive night camouflage. I'm going to guess disruptive night camouflage. It's that one that's like the green and the like black grids in it. I wouldn't say it's digi or pixel, but it is pretty rad looking DNC. Do another one of those videos about people you'll see in the army. Those 2 videos were fucking gold. Thank you, Rollzilla. I'd love to. I think I'm kind of running out of people you'll see in the army though. Some of those were even getting a bit too close for comfort in terms of being double ups. Like there was 3 different versions of the Hopeless Romantic and the I think the Hopeless Romantic and the Giga Chad were kind of not similar, but you kind of see we're cross-pollinating some of the classes there. The only way I think I could do a different one was if I did like every officer you'll meet in the army, or more specifically like every platoon commander you'll meet in the army, stuff like that. I think there's a bit more material to be had. But in terms of diggers that you'd meet in a platoon, that's 2 videos now with I guess 40 entries across them. I think I'd be struggling to get more. I could maybe get another 10, but even then would be bleeding over and kind of, it's just a bit gammon, you know what I mean? Like if I'm touching on categories or classes that have already been used. He surely do a vid on Oz Armor. What about outside the army? I'm just scrolling up here. Give me a sec. What do we got? I'm sorry if you'd answered this before, but have you served in the ADF? Yes, I was in the ADF. I was Army Soldier Man guy. I did 15 years. What about AMCD? AMCDs? Good one. Chill out. We used AMP in 2011, and then we got AMCU later. I don't think it was 2011, Gov. And I say that because in 2011, we were first issued Crye Precision Multicam, as in out of the packet. Where is it? Crye Multicam from Crye Precision. That was the first time it had been issued to conventional army. Like I mentioned before, the special operations guys had been using it for quite some time prior to that. But that's the first time we, as the big army, had been issued Crye Multicam, and that lasted a rotation or 2 before being replaced by, so I'm wiggling it here, Crye Multicam came in 2011. I say that with great certainty, and that was replaced in country, Afghanistan, by AMP. The time of that, I'm not too sure on. I want to say probably late 2012 was when AMP entered stage right and replaced Multicam. And then AMP was subsequently replaced with AMCU, even in the operational and domestic capacity. So in Afghanistan or Iraq, you were wearing actually only, I want to say only Afghanistan, I could be wrong. In Afghanistan, you were wearing AMP, that was replaced with AMCU. In Australia at the time, you were probably still wearing DPCU, and that was also replaced with AMCU. So both the domestic, as in home training pattern and uniform, and the operational then pattern and uniform was replaced with the one, AMCU. Okay, what else we got? Any other good, not weird questions before I hang up the phone? Would you ever do another video like the spy plane one? I found it really cool. Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed the spy plane video. That was one of my favorite ones to make and edit. I liked that style of having a narrative and telling like a historical tale. Similar kind of style to what I'm going for with the DPMU video, and that's probably going to be a constant going forward. So I'll have the more casual type of content videos, I suppose, like the 10 diggers you'll meet in the army, the 10 camouflage patterns that make you look sick, this kind of stuff, tier list, stuff that's a bit more, I don't know how to put it. To be blunt, it's kind of simpler. It's easy. But yeah, I want to do more of the narrative style kit, which was like the I was going to say Hoover Dam. Fuck me sideways. The Franklin River Dam. The story of that in Tasmania, I thought was really compelling, and it was an interesting bit of history that I'll happily admit I hadn't learnt about till recently, and I kind of had that thought that this is really wild. I should make a video on this because I feel like there's other people who probably haven't heard of this either. But yes, I want to make more videos like that and on similar, not topics, but similar historical eras and videos of stuff as well. As in lesser known stories or tales or legends and myths of the Australian Defence Force history, either operational or domestic, and then kind of not do like expose because I'm not trying to do anything like heavy hitting. Definitely not anything journalistic in nature. More so stuff that is just maybe under the surface, needs to be brought to the surface. Bloody June. 5 schmackos. Thanks, June. I can bloody buy I don't know. Is that a Happy Meal? How much is a Happy Meal these days? Are you going to do any more history vids? Also, sorry about flashbanging you on Twitter, lol. Flashbanging me on Twitter? What? I haven't been on Twitter in a while today. But thank you for the 5 schmackos. Are you going to do any more history vids? Yes. Pretty much what I was just saying. I'm going to do more stuff that I can take lesser known, like chapters of ADF history, and then do like a little, I don't know, animated thing on kind of telling a story in a digger friendly way. You should do a video on all the nicknames for the individual branches, crayon munchers, airy fairies. Yeah, nice. The thought that they immediately went send a mirage is absolutely hilarious. That was some creative license by me. I'm sure it didn't go down that simplistically. But yeah, there was a funny way of telling that. I can kind of, again, because I'm not going for like documentary or journalistic levels of realism here. Like, let's face it, I'm using flappy South Park-esque style animations for the fucking Chief of Defence Force and the Governor General, who was that? The Attorney General in that video, which I enjoy because it gives me a bit more creative liberty. Like, of course, I don't want to just be gammon and not put any effort in and get it completely wrong in terms of an accuracy and historical standpoint. But when I can, have a bit of fun and do a bit of a little recreation thing like that, while keeping the overall structure of the story pretty much true to life, then yeah, I'll do so because it's fun. Why is the Navy uniform C tier? It's the goated uniform. Look, I'll give you, now that I stare at it, I see a world where I could move MMCU to B tier, but I think C tier is pretty fair. But I'll agree with you that it looks sick, and I definitely think it's got potential for its said sickness. What was your Kapuka experience like, and then what was your first day at the battalion like within your ECN? What was your Kapuka? Oh man, I don't want to do Kapuka. It was so long ago, and my brain is fat and old, and I can't remember. Yeah, absolutely. This is in the fastest plane you had. Oh, it's not really okay. 1 or 2 more, and then I'm going to send. As someone looking to go officer, are there good officer platoon commander stereotypes, or are they mostly disliked? Since you mentioned that you're going to do a part 3 stereotypes vid, are there good officer platoon commando stereotypes, or are they mostly disliked? Yes. Answer in short. What are they off the top of my head? I can't think of. Look, I'd say this. You can have drastically different character types in terms of their personality that are still liked and still both capable and respected. So I don't think I could give you like an example of one like officerly trait or character or personality type that's going to be disliked or more liked, because I don't know, I met officers who were very different in, say, personality or how they presented themselves that were still exceptional in terms of their professional capabilities and leadership capabilities and strategic acumen and all this sort of stuff. So no, but I can certainly touch on a few examples, but it will be in a piss take fashion, as in a video style similar to the other ones. Duntroon is interesting. 1/3 are leaders and the rest are nerds and narcissists. Yeah. Nerds and narcissists. Sounds about right. Okay, that's me. Thanks for playing. We'll do another one soon. I don't know how often I can and will stream. This was kind of a little experiment. But yeah, thanks to everyone who rocked up and listened to me ramble about Camouflage for... How long have we been going? I don't know where it says. I don't even know how to see how far it's been going. Here we go. 1 hour and 35 minutes. Jesus. Okay. Peace out. Thanks. Bye. Take care.